was beginning to feel not only extremely hungry, but very thirsty as well. Had she been at home, she would have finished her breakfast long ago. Are you sure there's nothing else to eat around here except those disgusting, smelly snozcumbers? She asked. Not even a fizzwinkle, answered the big friendly giant. In that case, may I please have a little water? She said. Water? Said the BFG, frowning mightily. What is water? We drink it, Sophie said. What do you drink? Frobscottle, announced the BFG. All giants is drinking Frobscottle. Bless you. Sanitize, please. Is it as nasty as your snozcumbers? Sophie asked. Nasty? Cried the BFG. Never is it nasty. Frobscottle is sweet and jumbly. He got up from his chair and went to a second huge cupboard. He opened it and took out a glass bottle that must have been 6 feet tall. The liquid inside it was pale green and the bottle was half full. Here is Frobscottle, he cried, holding the bottle up proud and high, as though it contained some rare wine. Delumptious, fizzy Frobscottle, he shouted. He gave it a shake and the green stuff began to fizz like mad. But look, it's fizzing the wrong way, Sophie cried. And indeed it was. The bubbles, instead of traveling upward and bursting on the surface, were shooting downwards and bursting at the bottom. A pale green frothy fizz was forming at the bottom of the bottle. What on earth is meaning the wrong way? Asked the BFG. In our fizzy drinks, Sophie said, the bubbles always go up and burst at the top. Upwards is the wrong way, cried the BFG. You mustn't ever be having the bubbles going upwards. That's the most flush-bunking rubbish I was ever hearing. Why do you say that? Sophie asked. You is asking me why? Cried the BFG, waving the enormous bottle around as though he were conducting an orchestra. You is actually meaning to tell me you cannot see why it is a scrawny mistake to have the bubbles flying up instead of down? You said it was flush-bunking, now you say it's scrawny. Which is it? Sophie asked politely. Both! Cried the BFG. It is a flush-bunking and a scrawny mistake to let the bubbles go upwards. If you cannot see why, you must be as clucky as a duckhound. By Ringo, your head must be so full of frog squinkers and buzzwanglers. I is frittered if I know how you can think at all. Why shouldn't the bubbles go upwards? Sophie asked. I will explain, said the BFG. But tell me first, what name is you calling your Frobscottle by? One is Coke, Sophie said, and another is Pepsi. There are lots of them. And all the bubbles is going up? They all go up. Sophia asked. Catastrophe, cried the BFG. Upgoing bubbles is a catastrophe. Will you please tell me why? Sophie said. If you will listen carefully, I will try to explain, said the BFG. But your brain is so full of bug whiffles, I doubt you will ever understand. I'll do my best, Sophie said patiently. Very well then. When you is drinking this cokey drink of yours, said the BFG, it is going straight down into your tummy. Is that right, or is it left? That's right, Sophie said. And the bubbles is also going into your tummy, right or left? Right again, Sophie said. And the bubbles is fizzing upwards? Of course, Sophie said. Which means, said the BFG, that they will all come swish-whiffling up your throat and out of your mouth and make a foulsome, belchy burp. That is often true, Sophie said. But what's wrong with a little burp now and again? It's sort of fun. Burping is filthsome, the BFG said. Us giants is never doing it. But with your drink, Sophie said, what was it you called it? Frobscottle, said the BFG. With Frobscottle, Sophie said, the bubbles in your tummy will be going downwards, and that could have a far nastier result. Why nasty? Asked the BFG, frowning. Because, Sophie said, blushing a little, if they go down instead of up, they'll be coming out somewhere else with an even louder and ruder noise. A whiz popper! Grr! Cried the BFG, beaming at her. Us giants is making whiz poppers all the time. Whiz popping is a sign of happiness. It is music in our ears. You surely is not telling me that a little whiz popping is forbidden among the human beings. It is considered extremely rude, Sophie said. But you whiz popping, is you not, now and again? Asked the BFG. Everyone is whiz popping, if that's what you call it, Sophie said. Kings and queens are whiz popping, presidents are whiz popping, glamorous film stars are whiz popping, little babies are whiz popping.
A lot.
But where I come from, it is not polite to talk about it. Redonkulous, said the BFG. If everyone is making whiz poppers, then why not talk about it? We is now having a swiggle of this delicious frobscottle, and you will see the happy result. The BFG shook the bottle vigorously. The pale green stuff fizzed and bubbled. He removed the cork and took a tremendous gurgling swig. It's glummy, he cried. I love it. For a few moments, the big friendly giant stood quite still, and a look of absolute ecstasy began to spread over his long, wrinkly face. Then suddenly the heavens opened, and he let fly with a series of the loudest and rudest noises Sophie had ever heard in her life. They reverberated around the walls of the cave like thunder, and the glass jars rattled on their shelves. But most astonishing of all, the force of the explosions actually lifted the enormous giant clear off his feet like a rocket. Whoopee! Yes. Whoopee! He cried when he came down to earth again. Now that is whiz popping for you. Sophie burst out laughing. She couldn't help it. Have some yourself, cried the BFG, tipping the neck of the enormous bottle toward her. Don't you have a cup? Sophie said. No cups, only bottle. Sophie opened her mouth, and very gently the BFG tipped the bottle forward and poured some of the fabulous frobscottle down her throat. And oh gosh, how delicious it was. It was sweet and refreshing. It tasted of vanilla and cream with just the faintest trace of raspberries on the edge of the flavor. And the bubbles were wonderful. Sophie could actually feel them bouncing and bursting all around her tummy. It was an amazing sensation. It felt as though hundreds of tiny people were dancing a jig inside her and tickling her with their toes. It was lovely. It's lovely, she cried. Just wait, said the BFG, flapping his ears. Sophie could feel the bubbles traveling lower and lower down her tummy, and then suddenly, inevitably, the explosion came. The trumpet sounded, and she too made the walls of the cavern ring with the sound of music and thunder. Bravo! Shouted the BFG, waving the bottle. You is very good for a beginner. Let's have some more.
You should see this movie. It's so funny.
Good job.
Why? Your pants.
All right, I'm going to start the next chapter, but we're not going to finish it. We'll see. Journey to Dream Country. After the mad frobscottle party was over, ladies, Sophie settled herself again on top of the enormous table. You is feeling better now? Asked the big friendly giant. Much better, thank you, Sophie said. Whenever I is feeling a bit scrotty, the BFG said, a few gollops of frobscottle is always making me hopscotchy again. I must say, it's quite an experience, Sophie said. It's a rat twizzler, the BFG said. It's gloriumptious. He turned away and strode across the cave and picked up his dream-catching net. I is galloping off now, he said, to catch some more whoopsie-whiffling dreams for my collection. I is doing this every day without missing. Is you wishing to come with me? Not me, thank you very much, Sophie said. Not with those other giants lurking outside. I is snuggling you very cozy into the pocket of my waistcoat, the BFG said. Then no one is seeing you. Before Sophie could protest, he had picked her up off the table and popped her into the waistcoat pocket. There was plenty of room in there. Is you wishing for a little hole to peep out from? He asked her. "There's one here already," she said. She had found a small hole in the pocket, and when she put one eye close to it, she could see out very well indeed. She watched the BFG as he bent down and filled his suitcase with empty glass jars. He closed the lid, picked up the suitcase in one hand, took the pole with the net on the end in the other hand, and marched toward the entrance of the cave. As soon as he was outside, the BFG set off across the great hot yellow wasteland where the blue rocks lay and the dead trees stood, and where all the other giants were skulking about. Sophie, squatting low on her heels in the pocket of the leather waistcoat, had one eye glued to the little hole. She saw the group of enormous giants about 300 yards away. "Hold your breaths," the BFG whispered down to her. "Cross your figglers. Here we go. We is going right past all these other giants. Is you seeing that whopping great one? The one nearest to us?" "I see him," Sophie whispered back, quivering. "That is the horriblest of them all, and the biggest of them all. He is called the flesh lump-eating giant." "I don't want to hear about him," Sophie said. "He is 54 feet high," the BFG said softly as he jogged along. "And he's swallowing human beings like they is sugar lumps, 2 or 3 at a time." "You're making me nervous," Sophie said. "I is nervous myself," the BFG whispered. "I always gets as jumpsy as a jog hopper when the flesh lump-eating giant is around." "Keep away from him," Sophie pleaded. "Not possible," the BFG answered. "He is galloping easily 2 times as quickly as me." "Shall we turn back?" Sophie said. "Turning back is worse," the BFG said. "If they is seeing me running away, they is all giving chase and throwing rocks." "They would never eat you though, would they?" Sophie asked. "Giants is never guzzling other giants," the BFG said. "They is fighting and squirreling a lot with each other, but never guzzling. Human beings is more tasty to them." The giants had already spotted the BFG, and all heads were turned watching him as he jogged forward. He was aiming to pass well to the right of the group. Through her little peephole, Sophie saw the flesh lump-eating giant moving over to intercept them. He didn't hurry. He just loped over casually to a point where the BFG would have to pass. The others loped after him. Sophie counted 9 of them all together, and she recognized the blood bottler in the middle of them. They were bored. They had nothing to do until nightfall. There was an air of menace about them as they loped slowly across the plain with long, lolloping strides, heading for the BFG. "Here comes the runty one," boomed the flesh lump beater. "Ho, ho, there, runty one. Where's you splash winkling away to in such a hefty hurry?" He shot out an enormous arm and grabbed the BFG by the hair. The BFG didn't struggle. He simply stopped and stood quite still and said, "Be so kind as to be letting go of my hair, flesh lump eater." The flesh lump eater released him and stepped back a pace. The other giants stood around waiting for the fun to start. "Now then, you little grob squiffer," boomed the flesh lump eater. "We is all wanting to know where you is galloping off to every day in the daytime. Nobody ought to be galloping off to anywhere until it is getting dark. The human beings could easily be spotting you and starting a giant hunt, and we is not wanting that to happen. Is we not?" "We is not," shouted the other giants. "Go back to your cave, runty one." "I is not galloping to any human being country," the BFG said. "I is going to other places." "I is thinking," said the flesh lump eater, "that you is catching human beings and keeping them as pets." "Right you is," cried the blood bottler. "Just now I is hearing him chittering away to one of them in his cave." "You is welcome to go and search my cave from frack to bunt," the BFG answered. "You can go looking in every nook and cranny. There is no human beans or stringy beans or runner beans or jelly beans or any other beans in there." Sophie crouched still as a mouse inside the BFG's pocket. She hardly dared breathe. She was terrified she might sneeze. The slightest sound or movement would give her away. Through the tiny peephole, she watched the giants clustering around the poor BFG. How revolting they were. All of them had piggy little eyes and enormous mouths. When the flesh lump eater was speaking, she got a glimpse of his tongue. It was jet black, like a slab of black steak. Ew. Every one of them was more than twice as tall as the BFG. Suddenly, the flesh lump eater shot out 2 enormous hands and grabbed the BFG around the waist. He tossed him high in the air and shouted, Catch him, man-hugger! The man-hugger caught him. The other giants spread out quickly in a large circle, each giant about 20 yards from his neighbor, preparing for the game they were going to play. Now the man-hugger threw the BFG high and far, shouting, "Catch him, Bone Cruncher!" The Bone Cruncher ran forward and caught the tumbling BFG and immediately swung him up again. "Catch him, Child Chewer!" he shouted. And so it went on. The giants were playing ball with the BFG, vying with each other to see who could throw him the highest. Sophie dug her nails into the sides of the pocket, trying to prevent herself from tumbling out when she was upside down. She felt as though she were in a barrel going over the Niagara Falls. And all the time there was the fearful danger that one of the giants would fail to catch the BFG and he would go crashing to the ground. "Catch him, Meat Dripper! Catch him, Gizzard Gulper! Catch him, Maid Masher! Catch him, Blood Bottler! Catch him, catch him, catch him!" In the end, they got bored with this game. They dumped the poor BFG on the ground. He was dazed and shattered. They gave him a few kicks and shouted, "Run, you little runt! Let us be seeing how fast he was galloping." The BFG ran. What else could he do? The giants picked up rocks and hurled them after him. He managed to dodge them. "Ruddy little runt!" they shouted. "Troggy little twit! Shrivelly little shrimp! Mucky little midget! Squaggly little squib! Grabby little grub!" At last the BFG got clear of them, and in another couple of minutes the pack of giants was out of sight over the horizons. Sophie popped her head up from the pocket. "I didn't like that," she said. "Phew," said the BFG. "Few and far between. They was in a nasty crouching mood today, was they not? I is sorry you was having such a whirligig time." "No worse than you," Sophie said. "Would they ever really hurt you?" "I isn't ever trusting them," the BFG said. "How do they actually catch the humans they eat?" Sophie asked. "They is usually just sticking an arm in through the bedroom window and snitching them from their beds," the BFG said. "Like you did to me." "Ah, but I isn't eating you," the BFG said. "How else do they catch them?" Sophie asked. "Sometimes," the BFG said, they is swimming in from the sea like fishies with only their heads showing above the water. And then out comes a big hairy hand and grabbles someone off the beach. "Children as well?" "Often chidlers," the BFG said. "Little chidlers who is building sandcastles on the beach. That is who the swimmeling ones are after. Little chidlers is not so tough to eat as old grandmama. So says the child chewing giant." All right, we'll stop there.
Can I finish?
It's a long chapter. All right, Emma, can you shut that off, please?